In the early 1980s, the Taipei Palace Museum used to organize worldwide exhibition tours to promote its collections. To avoid damage to their porcelain and to study long-lost porcelain craftsmanship, the museum had hoped to invite an expert to reproduce the antiques they were preserving. Unsurprisingly, the choice fell on Cai Caofang, a regular visitor of the museum's porcelain collection.
It could have been sold for 50 Taiwan new dollars, but a porcelain plant manager came to me after seeing it. The cup is very special. It was pure luck that it came out that way.
The success of the cup boosted Cai's confidence, and not long after, he opened his own porcelain production workshop. Whenever he had free time, Cai visited the Palace Museum at the foot of Yangming Mountain. There, he would look at porcelain antiques and try to draw inspiration from the old traditions of these lost crafts. Of the museum's 700,000 antiques, 25,310 are porcelain from the 5 great kilns and the royal households, covering the period from the Song to the Qing dynasties. All are masterpieces in the history of porcelain art.
Every time I went to the museum, I observed carefully, so they noticed me. They used to think that only the Japanese like porcelain, but some Taiwanese like as well.
Our former directors, Mr. Chiang and Mr. Qin, both admired people with a talent for imitating ancient pieces. Because of these reasons, and Cai's own love for porcelain, the Palace Museum wanted to give him close access to the antiques.
After some deliberation, the museum gave Cai unprecedented access to their exhibits. A red-glazed guanyin vase was carefully taken out of its display case. With the glass barriers removed, its color and luster became even more impressive.
The guards opened the case and let me touch it, observe it, and measure it. Such an opportunity is very rare. It encouraged me a lot.
The generous Palace Museum and devoted Tsai thus met. It's hard to say who was luckier. Indeed, luck was on both sides and their story was just beginning. In 1975, Tai and his wife built their own kiln, Sao Feng Pottery Arts, in Beitou District in Taipei.
It's been 38 years. Time flies so fast. I never gave up on this. In fact, I can do nothing else. No matter how hard your work is, you should carry on. That kiln, a lot of people can't handle it. It's so hot in the summer. The others will avoid working there, but I won't.
He was short of sleep. I'm serious. When we were kids, we all knew that even though it was time to sleep, my father had to continue working. It took me many years to realize what was going on. For a long time, I thought kiln workers simply didn't sleep.
Talented both in art and science, Tsai is able to turn clay models into splendid artwork. But behind each piece is hidden a series of elusive figures and formulas.
Yes, he's an artist. But frankly speaking, both in his character and the way he works, I think he's more like a scientist. A chemistry major, a scientist, that's able to master an art form and achieve great artistic skill. In my opinion, he is really a genius. It's a gift. Talent. I believe in talent. He has a strong character and perseverance, endeavor, and persistence. In fact, he doesn't consider results or accomplishments, not at all. It's just because he likes doing it and enjoys his work. He is so devoted. His devotion has lasted for many decades. It's impressive.
During the Spring Festival of 1981, 6-year-old Wan Ti and her parents visited an old man.
The long white beard gave him a very special look, but he was very amiable. He didn't talk much, but he was very kind to children. His temperament and charm really appealed to people. Not until I grew up did I know who he was.
At the time, 82-year-old painter Zhang Datian had lived in Taipei for 4 years. Upon the arrival of every festival, Zhang always sent gifts to his large circle of friends. Through the Palace Museum, he'd gotten to know Tsai.
In fact, Master Datian wanted to send my dad a painting of his. My dad immediately said, "No, no, no. I can't. But Master Datian took it seriously. He said, just pick one painting. He'd give him any one, but Dad refused.
Later, he came up with an idea. He asked me to make something for him. He might show me a color and then ask if I could make something like that. I'd make a few different ones. I made the 4 treasures of the study for him. His dinnerware was also my work. In his final year, he wanted to make a vase with one of his paintings. He was nearly 84 years old.
In 1983, Tsai received an invitation from the Taipei Palace Museum to reproduce the porcelain antiques that were preserved there. To him, gaining close access to these masterpieces was a rare opportunity. In that period, Tsai studied the color and texture of the works made by royal kilns and tried to work out the techniques behind them.
At that time, we were able to make almost identical replicas. We were able to make pieces that were almost identical copies of the original. He would discard anything he wasn't happy with. If it failed to meet his expectations, he'd just smash it. I was impressed by his devotion. Most people think of scientists as logical people. Simply speaking, how could he ignore the costs and pursue something so impractical? In this regard, he really is more like an artist.
From 1983 to 2000, toiling over fire and clay, Tsai imitated a series of ancient porcelain masterpieces. The antiques seem to have transcended time and reappeared before us.
Twin porcelains vary a lot. They can be single-colored or two-colored. There are many options. A high content of borax can create this color at a lower temperature than usual. The abundance of colors in the ancient works is a great resource for us. At the top of red or copper red glazed wares, the color usually fades to white. Some visiting foreign artists spoke highly of the shape of this ware. China's plum vases boast a unique traditional shape. It's the sound of porcelain. This color is light celadon. It resembles azure. It's a modern shape, big body, small mouth. Flowers can be inserted here. This lackluster, simply shaped ware can calm one's mind and is full of Zen charm.
Evoking a feeling of purity and tranquility, celadon glazed wares are widely used by Chinese tea drinkers. In the Tang Dynasty, Lu Yu expressed his view about this in his book, The Classic of Tea. He suggested that green tea sets be made of the jade-like Celadon porcelain. Celadon glazed wares can intensify the color of green tea and enhance its visual appeal.
Order of Emperor Song Huizong. He wanted its beauty to be subtle. To represent such a beauty in modern copies requires in-depth research.
Emperor Huizong, the most artistically gifted monarch in China, was himself skilled at both painting and calligraphy. During the last 20 years of his reign, he brought the Celadon craft exemplified by the roux kiln technique to its climax. But after the fall of the Northern Sung, the craft disappeared. In the following 800 plus years, nobody knew how they were made. Today, there are less than 70 roux porcelain pieces in existence. The Taipei Museum keeps 23 of them, more than any other museum. It was not until 1958 that a kiln in Henan completed the first imitates of pea-green glazed roux porcelains. And over 20 years later, Tsai found a way to unveil the mystery of the roux kiln techniques. Pottery and porcelain is an art of clay and fire. Clay, firing, coloring, glazing, and shaping make up its soul. The traditional roux process includes a series of steps, with the clay and glazing playing the most important part. The materials for making roux wares include highly weathered China stone mixed with kaolin. After being washed in several tanks, the fine filtered earth is left to settle before finally being pressed and knelt into clay dough.
Roux wares are made of clay containing a high proportion of iron oxide. It appears slightly pink. Crack it open. The inside has the color of incense ash. It doesn't matter if it's broken. Let me show you. It's grey, like incense ash. The surface is different. It's grey inside. Materials of different kilns vary a lot. Only 0.5% results in this color. This requires 2%. It's better to adjust material recipes based on this.
Over the past few decades, Tsai has traveled the world looking for quality clay, going wherever a rare mineral is found.
Here it is. The white content is China stone. It's a China stone compound. China stone accounts for 6 to 7%. It's very sticky. The color will vary after it's fired. It contains copper, so it appears green. Interesting. It indicates there is copper.
Besides clay, glaze is also vital to the making of roux porcelains. Generally speaking, glazes are made from minerals that are ground to a certain fineness before being blended with certain proportions of a fluxing agent and water. As it thickens, the lime glaze is finished. The fired plain wares will be glazed according to their shape.
When making porcelain, there are some difficulties to face. The first is adjusting the glazing color, especially when duplicating antiques. To fully represent the features of the ancient craft, you need to make great efforts. In regard to the glazing color, roux porcelains are the hardest to imitate.
It's for mat azur glaze. It's a common recipe, so I know it by heart, and I can write it out immediately. Obviously, it appears red. 337.6 grams. 336 grams with the bag's weight deducted. The bag has weight. I figured it out exactly. 1.6 grams are superfluous. There are also some powders weighing 0.3 grams. Blend them again. The red powder is sticky. I have studied azure wares carefully. I've spent more than 50 years. April 12th, Mat Azure. April 12th, Mat Azure. The sky will look different. The cloud will change in shape. It still doesn't look perfect. It's darker than azure. Azure should be brighter, with a slight tinge of blue. The blue is not strong enough. If the firing fails, the porcelain will have this color.
Legend has it that roux porcelain's color was derived from a dream of Emperor Huizong. The picky emperor disliked white ding porcelain, but was fascinated with the color of the sky after rain, so he ordered craftsmen to fire porcelain of that color. Finally, roux kiln potters successfully created the color.
Unlike other celadon works, roux porcelain features azure, with a slight tinge of pink. The color is said to stem from a recipe in Emperor Huizong's era that included agate.
It may be the reason. A gate should be finely ground, which takes a long time. Today, there are grinders, but they were not available back then, so the output must have been low. When I just begun studying in Japan, my teacher only allowed me to grind materials manually. My shoulder suffered a lot then.
The agate gives Ru porcelain an air of mystery and tranquility. Ru pieces have fewer colors than Jun works. It only comes in azure, sky blue, bluish white, and pea green. But during the firing process, there may be interesting surprises.
This is Ru Jun. In the Song dynasty, the Ru and Jun kilns belonged to the same school. That's how these wares came about. Ru Jun used to be well known. The kilns were as close as brothers. Jun porcelain is less glossy and transparent. It looks like this. It's a natural change, as shown by these test strips.
Readied glaze will first be daubed on a small piece of clay for a test firing that aims to compare the actual and planned results and to facilitate recipe adjustments. This step is to compare the colors.
This was made in 1994. You have to compare it to this in order to know what this is and what is different. It requires patience and carefulness.
The strips, like the year rings of a tree, record the decade-long bond between Tsai and porcelain. Today, they are just like old friends he hasn't seen for a long time, or memories of his past self.
I wrote this, but I forgot it. I made 3 glazes with this clay, number 1, 2, 3. This may contain copper. Clay from the mainland usually contains natural objects that can result in such an effect. Meanwhile, on June 27th, 2002, on that day, number 2 and 3 were also fired in a test. One is glossy, the other is not. It's really good. Many colors failed to appear. It should have been beautiful.
Of the remaining strips, many are of Ru porcelain. Polished by time, the smooth and glossy surface of the small pieces show a jade-like luster.
It will continue to crack. Ice cracks vary in size. This has not been fired, but there's small cracks under the glaze. This has also split. They were made in the same period. This is strip number 14, that is number 12.
Ice cracks are a kind of porcelain glaze defect. According to how cracks are dispersed, there are large cracks and small cracks. Originally, cracks were flaws in the glazed surface caused by high temperature firing. Later, craftsmen turned the defect into a perfect natural decoration full of aesthetic charm. When night falls in Tsai's porcelain room in the cold early spring, sharp cracks can be sometimes heard, the sound of roux-ware glaze splitting. After the strict clay processing, glaze making, test firing and shaping steps, the wares are brought to the kiln to undergo their greatest transformation. After being fired for 13 hours at 1,300 degrees Celsius, they'll need 2 days to cool down. But not every finished work is perfect. Even different positions in the same kiln yield different colors. In fact, the yield rate each time is only 17%, while quality works are even rarer.
Experience is important. It's a kind of art and science that requires a coherent production process.
My family members have seen that even though he is successful, he has never changed. His devotion, I think, is still the same as it was decades ago. No achievement, result, or success, no matter how beautiful the product, can satisfy him. I can promise that he will keep working forever, looking for more surprises.
Many Japanese potters in their 90s are still working. On one hand, it's not a heavy work, and it can ensure them a living. The situation in Taiwan is the same. Many people know I'm still working, so they say, even Tsai is still working. How can we retire?
He is very, in my eyes, childlike. Long ago, I couldn't understand it. But now that I'm older and see things more clearly, it's easy to feel his childlike spirit. It's really praiseworthy.
A plum can be placed this way in a plum vase. They spoke highly of the shape. You wouldn't stop them from coming. It was once a stray dog. Some came here alone. Interesting. A dog won't relieve itself until you bring it out of the door. You are here. A long walk can help the dog detoxify its body. So exercise is necessary. It shows us people need to walk and do exercise.
He often has a lot of really wild ideas. He can be more childlike than an actual child.
The rainy weather that has lasted for over 10 days suddenly turns sunny. It's the scene that appeared in Emperor Huizong's dream over 800 years ago. And the light blue of the sky is indeed no different from the color of the roux wares.
It becomes clear around the clouds. Look at the gaps between the clouds. It's becoming a circle. We can see it. It is shiny. The sun has come out.